with the PHU Dynasty Podcast. This is episode 22, and we have officially wrapped up the 2021-2022 season. We have our champion, James Seafew and the Los Angeles Lambs. Congrats to James for a tremendous season. I wish it could have been me. I bet Sean wishes the same thing for his team. However, things happen throughout the season, and James was the team that could withstand the most amount of crap, pretty much. It seems like this year with all the injuries and COVID. So we're very happy for James. This is his third title now. And this is also Dan's third runner-up, unfortunately. And I just feel bad for the kid. He did get his title in 2012, but it's been almost a decade now since we've seen a Dan victory.
You felt so bad for him, you traded him Davante Adams.
I did trade him Davante Adams. We'll get into that in a little bit. Just wanted to quickly touch on the rebrand a little bit here for the PHU Dynasty Podcast. We got some new swag on StreamYard here.
Fresh.
So we're looking good. We got a new logo. We got a new webcam. Sean looking fresh. We got 1080p.
Looking the same over here.
Yeah, Sean's still looking good though. I don't even know what you use. Do you use like an iPhone or your laptop or something?
Just on my Mac. That's it.
Yeah, Mac looks pretty good, man. Mac setup.
Good old Mac.
But this is the pro version of StreamYard that we're doing a trial on today. So it's showing us in full 1080p, so you can see every one of my pores. And then on top of that, we got some new graphic stuff that's available to us. So this is a monthly fee type of thing. So if this is something we're interested in keeping around, maybe we can work with Dynabook on something like this for at least for the off season, and maybe during next season we can cancel it and then bring it back. But we'll see.
Really cut into those profits of Dynabook.
That's right. Dynabook made money this year, according to James. But speaking of James too, we have tentatively scheduled James for next week to give his championship press conference, as well as getting some Dynabook updates. So you'll see James next week as we kick off these off-season podcasts. And with that being said, Sean, we have kind of been poking through the Sleeper app here for a little while. And if you guys haven't seen, this is for all league members, if you haven't gone through to the settings for your league settings, there's a league history, and it goes back to when we first started on Sleeper, which is 2019, the 2018 season technically. And you can kind of see all the all-time standings, who's got the most wins, losses, the best winning percentage, the most transactions. So we can quickly discuss a few of them here. Sean, who do you think has the most transactions out of everybody?
Out of everybody? That's
for the last, you think it's Alex? Alex has 321, and that is the number one answer. It's like Family Feud. It's the number one answer. Now, who has the least? The least is a little bit harder.
Oh, my heart says Dan, but my brain is telling me Scavelli.
Scavelli has the least amount. He only has 75 moves in what was 4 seasons.
Hey, when you love your team and you put up points every year, you don't really have to do anything.
He's a set it and forget it kind of guy. And he's an off-season builder. He builds through the off-season. It's not so much of a regular season thing for him.
When he moves players, he moves like 3 or 4 people at a time in a trade.
It's always like a big trade. It's not. It's never like
money's worth.
It's never like a 1 for a pick or anything like that usually. And then another funny thing too with this all-time standings is you can see how many messages have been sent through the Sleeper app. It is hilarious. All-time Alex has 867 messages, and the next closest is Vince with 480. So he doubles them. Dan has only sent 16 messages in 4 years. He's a silent assassin.
Tough to get a line on him.
And then they also have some really cool stuff in here if you go through it. They have all-time weekly scores, which is pretty cool. All-time player high scores, so it shows you individual players per week, like who has the best ones. And then you can go through each one of the season standings, and it's a great time. So I suggest y'all go through it, check it out, see if that's something you're, interested in. If you want to talk about any of that stuff in the podcast, let me know. We can always make that happen. But let's go ahead and get into this season recap episode. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of shit happened over the last couple of weeks here. So let's get into it. So we got to first, once again, congratulations to the year 2022 PHU Dynasty champion Los Angeles Lambs. Second title in 3 years, third title overall. It's the most titles in the league, I believe. Since we have started this in 2011, I think was the first year. So I have 2. James has 3. I think Scavelli might have 2. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we'll have to go back into James's Excel spreadsheet that he's got. Just a tremendous season for James.
We're just a little upset that that's not Sony Michel, just given the way that James has won championships with those players.
It's funny. We're actually getting set to talk about Sony Michel here in a couple seconds, so I'll leave that one out there. However, we will talk about this trade that happened between myself and Dan. This is an interesting one because of the timing of it, I think. I really wasn't even planning on doing anything really crazy with any of my big guys until I had this just random thought. I was like, let's just see what we could get. And I just threw out feelers to pretty much all the people with picks and, availability. And Dan was one of the ones that got back to me saying he was interested in Adams. And, if I had had this inkling in my head to, throw out these feelers, maybe a week sooner, I think Dan wins the championship with Devontae Adams. So
very likely.
Even if this trade was made, maybe I don't know if I would have made this trade, obviously while I was in because I needed to compete. But, Devontae Adams on this roster now, along with Justin Jefferson, with Keenan Allen, with some of these other guys that Dan has, Dalvin Cook, Antonio Gibson. This is probably going to go into next year and pump up his ego even more as we do pump up the lamppost every year here on PHU Media. I feel like this is probably going to be the number 1 power rank team after this trade.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yes, take them away.
So my take on this trade, because there was a little bit of backlash towards Dan from who was Vince. It was Vince. He was tearing Dan a new asshole about this trade. So my perspective on this trade is obviously your value that you got is really good. And I think everybody in the league would have taken that if other than maybe like the 1 or 2 teams that have like those peak rosters. But for Dan, if he's already scoring upwards of the most points in the league every year, and he's got all this young talent on his roster anyway, going all in for a player in their prime, even if you're paying a little more than other people would, just feels still like good value to me.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at
for him too,
he's got young guys. It's not like his roster isn't really constructed like mine, where I have a little bit more of the age on my side as opposed to him. I mean, he's got Justin Jefferson, Cook's pretty much in his prime at this point. There's who's quarterback? Josh Allen's like young as hell. I mean, like all these guys, Mark Andrews, he made the big trade for, he's in his prime. All these guys are pretty much in their prime. So he also has like Gibson. He's had great drafts over the last few drafts. So he's built the core of the team so well. I do agree with you that if anybody was really poised to make this trade at this time with that capital, it's probably Dan. But
also, no offense to you, but do we all really want Dan getting the best value in the first round every year and finding the gem every year in the draft?
That's why I wanted his picks, because maybe some of that mojo will rub off on me when I make the picks, because I could use some of that Dan mojo in drafting.
It definitely won't be Alex, so you know.
Oh God, oh God, don't even start.
Start early and often.
No, I mean, it's the first episode of the off season. We can't have this already. That being said, too, I think a lot of the backlash, if you want to call it that, with this trade on Dan's side was mostly for the fact that we don't know where Adams was going to play at this point and who he'll be attached with. I mean, I still feel like at the end of the day, they're both going to end up back in Green Bay, and it'll be a happy thing. But if Rodgers leaves and it's Jordan Love, he did play well with Jordan Love, I believe, in the games that he was in. I feel like he's quarterback proof personally, but it's not Aaron Rodgers though.
Yeah, you put a replacement level quarterback in there, it's not going to have the same stats as he would with Aaron Rodgers, but still.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers' stats are like 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns. Like it's probably not going to be like that, but it's going to be, 1,000 yards, 9 touchdown kind of guy at least. I mean, he's just a great player. So that was kind of the big trade to kick off this off season. For my team, I'm looking at my team in a couple of different ways at this point. I kind of have this fork in the road. I could take 2 different routes, go full rebuild. I could kind of just backfill with some of these draft picks and keep the youth coming in and keep trying to compete. I got a couple different options, but this trade definitely opens up the email and the phone lines a little bit more to potentially make some more deals. So we'll see how the offseason progresses. So let's get into these headlines. So the way I've constructed this season recap is pretty much through headlines, and I like the idea of just talking about the big points from the season for each team. So I as you might already see, I already messed up one thing in this headlines. 196 points for was not for the season. I believe it was 1963 was that last number. But these headlines are pretty much, what I thought were some of the more important things to talk about. So let's go ahead and get this rolling. For James's team, obviously won the championship. The Eckler and Mixon trade that happened earlier this offseason, or this past offseason, hit huge in every way possible. Eckler finishes the number 2 running back for the season, and Mixon finished for the number 3 running back for the season, which without that trade, there's no way that this championship happens with CMC going down.
Relatively steady all year too. There was no crazy pop-off games. I think Eckler had one game where he had a pretty crazy score, but other than that, they were just rock solid all year.
Yeah, they were just dropping double-digit points pretty much every week, and then CMC going down, which is a little bit lower on this list. Imagine if he had him. I mean, it would have been wild. I mean, he definitely would have won a couple more games probably, and I feel like James has positioned himself where even he could be in a position to even move Christian McCaffrey this offseason.
I was gonna say, does that make sense for him? I mean,
the value is not great right now,
Yeah.
But it's still, you might have a team, I don't know what team right now, not looking at it, but a team that could just use a running back to kind of get him over the hump kind of team, that might be willing to invest something in him. But when you're James, you're sitting, you kind of dealt away all your picks to get Eckler and Mixon. Maybe trading away Christian McCaffrey, recoup some of those picks somehow, or maybe get somebody else. That might be a decent option. But that trade, Eckler and Mixon, it was a talked about trade at the time. Is it going to hit? This is an all-in move. The all-in worked. It definitely worked. And I'm sure James would make that trade 1,000 more times if he could. So
yep.
You'll love to see it. Second up on the list, Justin Herbert, man. Holy shit. What a season.
Elite.
The boy can throw the ball. And
zipping it in there.
I didn't believe in him coming into the draft. I've said it multiple times on the show. I didn't see it. I saw, the classic Oregon one-read quarterback that everybody else, in previous years with Oregon, and just there wasn't a lot of pro-ready things that I saw. I saw a lot of great arm talent. I saw a lot of the IQ was there, but I didn't see it translate to the field at Oregon. So I was a little concerned going into that draft with him. However, he shut me up real quick. And he is now looking at being arguably one of the top. I mean, he's already the second best quarterback now. He's number 2 quarterback this year. Is his ceiling number 1? Could he challenge Pat Mahomes at this point?
So I'm going to answer that question with another question. What does it look like going forward for him? You get Mike Williams, I think. Is he free agent? this offseason, right?
I believe
We've
so.
got another year older of Keenan Allen, who's still probably arguably the best route runner in football, really herky-jerky, hard to stop. But another year older. You got Eckler, who finally had like a relatively healthy season, which hasn't been his norm this season.
That's true.
And you take that away, I mean, Donald Parham gets another year better. And then outside of that, I don't think any of their other receivers really showed out a lot this season. I think they're good peripheral pieces, but I wouldn't be surprised if they took people in the draft to just kind of surround him with a lot of talent going forward. And if that's the case, then he can throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns every year.
Yeah, I mean, if I starting with Keenan Allen, I do think, I feel like he'll be one of those guys that his play style bodes well into him playing well for a couple more years.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a burner. He's never been that guy. It's kind of been shown over the last few years, specifically with the Jagaloon Antonio Brown, kind of plays a similar game. I feel like Keenan Allen will be kind of that just staple for him for the next few years for sure. Williams coming back, I'm not even so sure that like losing Williams is like that big of a deal. They could easily replace him in free agency. I think there's probably going to be guys that are out there that, can offer similar skill sets. I don't think Mike Williams, he did play great this year.
A-Rob, 1 year.
Perfect example. Like sign him up, instant upgrade in my opinion. I just feel like that's a position that can easily be replaced, and I'm not so worried about that. I'm more worried about Eckler, honestly. If he doesn't stay healthy, then I feel like there's the safety valve gone. They don't really have much at tight end at this point. But that being said, Herbert can elevate I feel like he's a quarterback that has the potential to elevate the play of those around him, which is the sign of a great quarterback, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't want to make it sound like I was like shitting on Herbert.
No, we're just pointing
it out. He also has probably one of the best young left tackles in football on his team. And that's
no question. That O-line is solid as shit too. They used to be crap, and they got better. I also like Josh Palmer. They kind of used him towards the end of the year when guys were injured. Yeah. You got that guy coming up. I bet you they draft another one. I feel like the arrow is pretty much only going up for Herbert at this point. Yeah, he should be in the top 5 discussion pretty much every year, and he's super young, so you got to love it. We talked about CMC a little bit, so let's talk about your previously mentioned Sony Michel, playoff freaking hero. James definitely got a huge boost there with Sony Michel towards the end of the season, specifically the playoffs. Last 4 games for Sony Michel is 19.9, 7.9, 11.5, 20.5, and 15.9. So you're getting basically RB1 numbers out of Sony Michel right during the crunch of the playoffs.
Timing is everything. Leads the league in rushing in December. They play I believe the teams that are going to be picking 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in the NFL draft. The Rams did, which equals a running game, which equals the almost corpse of Sony Michel, who somehow is still relevant in the league.
And I still can't believe that trade that the Rams made. I think didn't they go up like a 3rd or a 4th or some shit for Sony Michel?
I don't know.
It just seemed like too much at the time. But I love the fact that James, just gets the course back right when he needs them, and it works out great. And that is truly one of the players that was pivotal to this championship. 5 points less from Sony Michel, he loses the championship this year. So that was every player was important for him.
Props to him for playing him. He's not a player that inspires a lot of confidence with the way he looks playing.
Nope.
So it's pretty easy to lose weight if he has a bad game. So it's good to stick to this.
Couldn't agree more. That was a great managerial move by James. So great season for James. Championship season. Congrats again. I feel like we'll be seeing this team near the top again next year. Can't really see any real reason that anything slides. Honestly, the team could be even better. We didn't even talk about CeeDee Lamb. Could take another step up next year. There's just tons of talent on this team. Mike Evans played great this year for him. Tyler Lockett's basically doing Tyler Lockett things. Brandon Cooks, I believe, is also on this team. Super underrated. Just a good team. Damn good team.
Damn good.
Damn good. So let's move on. We'll talk about Dan.
Dan
good team. Crazy the fact that he made it to the championship game, to be honest with you. 7-7.
Started 1,900 points and went 7-7.
That's exactly right. And he started the season 2-5. So it was a rough sled to start the year, but he really rebounded in the second half. Not gonna lie, you had me in the first half. And Josh Allen, what can you say about this guy? I mean, there's another quarterback I was totally wrong on. Don't listen to me when I come talk about quarterbacks, guys. That's what you need to start doing. Josh Allen looked like a trash bag his first year, and he's been the number one quarterback 2 years straight now. 23 or 4 years old too. It's just QB.
I mean, I know we had this conversation the other day. I think he's got to be like the only example of somebody who's turned it around this much from his rookie season, because usually
there's not many.
Usually know within a certain amount of time, like, all right, like this guy's got it, or nah.
Yeah, I mean, it's either like a Daniel Jones situation, and that's what you don't want to be in, is a Daniel Jones situation. You got to know, and props to the the Chicago Bears with Mitchell Trubisky. Like, they just knew they didn't have it, and they're just like, fuck it, we're out. Yeah, seriously, and they're just like, we're out, we're done, and that's Josh Allen is truly like one of those guys. I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback really turn it around that fast, like in one season, basically. He's basically been a stud ever since he's QB1. So awesome season. Hunter Renfrow breakout season. Who saw that coming? Not me.
No, I liked him.
I saw 50 yards in a cloud of dust.
Yeah, I was getting more Cole Beasley vibes of just like 8 catches for 50 yards a game. But
Derek Carr loves the kid.
Right. The Darren Waller injury really set him out. Like, since that injury, I think he has to be a wide receiver 1 in that time, if not like a top like 3 or 4 receiver.
I believe he finished 18 for the year. And that was, not even accounting he wasn't really used early on in the season as much as he is now. So, I mean, he was basically, I would argue, he's a top 10 quarterback or top 10 wide receiver for the, second half of the season. Hunter Renfrow played really well for Dan. Honestly, one of the biggest reasons he made it towards the back half of the year, turned around his season a little bit. He also had Dalvin Cook. He's got Justin Jefferson. Those guys were studs pretty much every time they touched the field. Mark Andrews, the big trade, big talk of the town during the offseason right before the draft. That trade paid off. He was tight end 1. Yeah, there's not much to say. He beat out Travis Kelce for the first time in 3 years, I believe, for tight end 1 spot. I mean, obviously worked out. He also has Rob Gronkowski on the bench. That worked out well this year when he was playing. Dan's team is in an excellent position next year now with the Devontae Adams trade. I really think he's probably number 1 on the list, honestly, at this point for power rankings. Could arguably be debated with a couple other of these guys too at the top. But yeah, I like Dan's team. I think the fact that he had almost fucking 1,950 points and somehow finished 7-7
insane
won't happen again, probably. I mean,
and honestly, is it Kirk Cousins playing away from winning the championship? Sorry, James.
He kind of was. Yeah, he kind of was.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Fantasy football. James wins. So.
Yep, fantasy football happens, and let's move on to the number 3 team, the Armadillos, here from Texas. Had a 10-4 record, had less points than Dan, despite being a few games ahead on the standings. Lost to Dan early on in that second round of the playoffs, I should say. Just a brutal injury year, honestly, for me. I hate to make the excuse, but towards the end of the year, losing James Robinson, losing Robert Woods, losing Adam Thielen, losing DeAndre Hopkins, it just wasn't really easy towards the end of the year. So despite that, we put up some good fights, but it wasn't quite enough to get past the lamppost and get into the championship game. And I would have lost the championship game had I got in it anyway. So here we are. Tom Brady, 44 years old, QB3, pretty much. And you had this called significantly earlier than I did. You called Tom Brady being a top 4 quarterback, I believe, in the redraft league when we were doing the draft. So you were right on that. I put him somewhere closer to like 7. Obviously, Tom Brady was great for the majority of the year. He had a couple of duds towards the middle of the season, but he was pretty much lights out. Still is lights out at this point.
Not current situation standing. There's so many weapons. Like so many.
Yeah, I mean, just when everybody's healthy, it's just stupid. And I feel like their next year they're gonna get another draft, probably pick up another receiver. Replace AB. It's not gonna be much different next year if he sticks around. So it's gonna be another year of Tom Brady. It's honestly another guy that on my team right now could be a potential trade guy for me, if depending on how my fork in the road goes. You never know, but he's a legit quarterback for sure. Next on the headlines, Ayuk is in fact alive. We did our first. I know, right?
No.
We did our first midseason recap, and he was in fact not alive at that time, and he has since turned it around. He had quite a few quality games towards the middle of the season. A lot of yardage, not a lot of touchdowns. But he's a guy that went from being pretty much a joke in the beginning of the season to having 4 or 5 double-digit games towards the back half of the year. So I feel a lot better about him now than I did early in the season.
Really fun to be a fly on the wall, like what the hell happened with him in the beginning of the year with Shanahan, because
I don't know.
Happened.
I don't know, Sean. It's
somehow
something happened. I feel like my gut is he didn't show up in shape, or something happened where he was being lazy and maybe just didn't take it seriously enough, and that was the way to kind of get him snapped into shape. But honestly, the best thing to come out of that Ayuk kind of doghouse first half was Debo Samuel. I mean, Debo Samuel, we'll talk about him very shortly here, but blew up in the wake of Ayuk pretty much just not being existent in that first half of the year. So that was very, very pivotal to a couple of players on the 49ers there. So just kind of a disappointing end of the year for me, but it was a good season overall. Just a lot of injuries toward the ends of the year, and now I'm a little concerned heading into 2022 with some of the injuries that specifically James Robinson one season, and you can't win it all. RB1, I'll in my heart forever, James Robinson.
You should get Bobby Trees back though. He got injured early enough in the season.
Yeah, I really, I still love Bobby Trees, and I feel like he is also a guy that will age well, I guess, in terms of his play style. So let's go on to number 4 in the final rankings.
Quick question before you move on. How much do you despise the New York Giants franchise just as an overall, based on the players that are on your roster?
So a lot, that could be said. A lot. And it's, I didn't even put him in the headlines. It's not even worth talking about him. It's just until ownership of the Giants, I feel like I'm just so tied to the Giants, and I just don't want to be. Like, if somebody just please offer me trades for these players. I know you don't want them either, probably, but just like somebody take them. Like, I just don't even want to look at them. The one that's the hardest to look at right now is Kenny Golladay, though. I just feel like he's a Michael Clayton checks in the bank right now. It's not looking good. And I know Daniel Jones sucks, and it's not helping anything. But that team needs so much in such a little amount of time, as far as getting Kenny Golladay and Shepard and Ingram and fucking Barkley, all these guys. They need an offensive line, because without that, none of those players can even function, because they just can't do it. Daniel Jones doesn't have the time to find the receivers, and Saquon doesn't have time to fucking run the ball. He's getting smashed in the backfield every time. So it's like, unless they, pull some shit out of their ass and get Aaron Rodgers in the offseason, I just can't see any way that these guys really rebound next year. And I'm not even sure, but have they mentioned that they're bringing back Daniel Jones at this point?
They did. They're bringing him and
Judge is coming back.
And Judge.
It's funny because I don't even think this is Judge's fault. I really don't. I think he sucks too, but like.
Did you hear what that press conference that he had?
Probably not. Maybe I have to change my tune.
Oh my gosh, go back and watch his press conference from this last week, like after the game. It is like nonsensical, like stupid shit. Like he basically lied for like 12 straight minutes about everything he was saying.
I'm so invested with the line or with this team. I feel like I need to go back and watch that press conference. But I feel like this is just such a stemming from the top issue where they're like, oh yeah, we have to build through the. I think Dave Gettleman, the GM, was saying it's like 2 or 3 years ago. So, oh yeah, you have to build your team through the offensive line. And what have they done in the last 4 years? Literally nothing but draft shitty Eric Flowers. Like they are so bad on the offensive line. They might be the worst line I've seen in a couple of years for sure. There's some bad lines I've seen, but that's one of the worst. Maybe with bad. I don't know what's worse than the Dolphins. Dolphins have a pretty bad line right now.
It's pretty bad.
But I don't know. I just feel like it's just such a shit show for those players, and their values are just tanked at this point. And it's crazy because like Saquon Barkley should be in his prime. He's only 24 or 25 at this point. And it's just like just being completely wasted on a shitty team. I just would love for him to leave somehow. All right, enough talk about the shitty Giants. Let's move on. The Swallows also lost in that second round of the playoffs. A really good season for the Swallows, right in the thick of it as far as points scored. Obviously, the big headline here is Cooper Kupp and Debo hitting as hard as possible in the same exact year. That basically put this team over the top, and it looks like it's going to stay that way for quite a while.
Yep.
I love both of them. Yeah, I love both those guys at this point. And it's funny too, I wasn't really a big Debo guy up until this year, obviously. Kupp has always been great, but I kind of figured that Kupp wouldn't be as big of a factor this year, and it would be more tight end driven with Higbee, with Stafford. I guess maybe it's because Stafford never really had a player like Kupp, in Detroit. I don't think he's ever really had that kind of guy. But I kind of thought it would be more tight end driven, that he would be going to Higbee more often. Turned out to kind of not be that way. So, Kupp is setting all kinds of records. It seems like as long as at this point, if he's tied to Stafford, it's going to be stud worthy every single week. So, going into next season, I can't see that changing.
Yeah, no, this team, other than Dan, I think this is probably the other team that's going to be up there when it comes to just off-season power rankings, just with both of those breakouts. Obviously, next up is Javonte Williams. If Denver gets any type of quarterback play next year, I'm assuming they'll have a new head coach. They'll probably get an offensive-minded head coach for next year too. They bring anybody in that's a competent quarterback, that breakout for Javonte Williams next year is going to be scary.
And frankly, I don't even think they need a quarterback. They just need to get rid of Melvin Gordon. I mean, the guy was a stud.
He's gone. He was, yeah. They put all their money
when Gordon didn't play, he was a complete stud. Yeah, didn't matter who was at quarterback.
They put a lot of money into their wide receivers. So I don't know if they're going to put more money into a running back this offseason. So I
highly doubt it.
Yeah.
I think the only way that he receives competition is if it's like a 4th-round rookie that they bring in to be like a change of pace. But I think they drafted Williams to be the guy. I don't think you draft him in the 2nd round unless you did think that.
Right.
And then on top of that, Denver's offensive line is excellent. They got Quinn Miners and Garrett Bowles. They have a really good offensive line. So, I mean, if they don't even bring in a quarterback for next year, his stock is up. I think he has the most yards per contact or yards after contact of anybody in the league, and he barely gets like 14 carries a game. I mean, he's going to be a stud. The only thing I worry about with him is injury because of his play style. He is a run through you kind of guy rather than a run around you kind of guy. And sometimes that can derail seasons and careers. So that being said, he's like 22. He's going to be an absolute stud for the next couple of years at least, as long as he's healthy. So you pair him up along with some of Vince's other talented players, specifically Actually, another breakout I didn't even put on the list for this. I should have, is James Conner, number 5 overall running back.
I was gonna bring that up. I wasn't sure.
Who the fuck saw that coming?
I don't know. He's another guy that's gonna get paid.
Another guy that, it's funny because I didn't even think he was like overly talented, for the last few years, but it was just literally a product of just being awful offensive line play in Pittsburgh. I mean, that being said,
he took the chance. He did a prove-it deal this year in Arizona, and it worked out. So we'll see. He's not. I mean, he won't be getting like any like crazy amounts of money like Zeke or Derrick Henry, but he's going to get paid.
I mean, he's 26, and it's kind of funny too if you look at his stats. He averaged 3.7 yards a carry, not very good. And 14 touchdowns and 700 yards. So he kind of it was very vulture-y. He, I can think of 100 times this year where I was watching Red Zone, just saw him plop in 1 yard touchdown after 1 yard touchdown. So,
yep.
That works in fantasy.
Great when Chase Edmonds is on your team.
that definitely works in fantasy. And God, did Vince need him this year, losing Cam Akers, losing some other running backs, Gus Edwards toward the beginning of the year.
I'm sure Vince will be watching the playoffs if Akers is playing. That'll be a great thing to see if he can get back on the field, because, I mean,
that would be a huge win for the offseason. Huge win before the offseason really even starts. If Akers shows up and next year he goes into, a Javonte Williams, Cam Akers backfield, probably feels pretty good about that. Miles Sanders too. Another guy that I was going to...
Once the Eagles flipped their game script to run heavy, Sanders did look really good this year. Just FYI.
Now, is Sanders... He's not a free agent, is he? Coming up? He's got another year?
He's got another year.
Yeah. I was hoping he'd go somewhere else. I just want to see what he can do with like a full workload.
He was getting it.
Let's look.
He was getting it.
Yeah, he got 3 games with over 16 carries. Looked pretty good too.
Yup.
Yeah, he had a 94-yard game, 120-yard game, 131-yard game with only touching the ball 50% of the time. It's pretty wild. So maybe he is good. Who knows? Maybe we need to see some more of Miles Sanders. Who knows? 3 years though. His rookie year is really good too. Just more time on Miles Sanders. Who knows? Also want to talk about Darren Waller. Now I put step back with a question mark because truthfully, when he was on the field early on in the season, it wasn't that great. If you look at his numbers, he obviously had that big opening week, 17 points, but then sprinkled in some 6, 5, 11, 4, 5, 9, 2.
It's just a huge touchdown regression. Only 2 touchdowns on the year. I mean,
yeah, compared to 9 last season.
That's what's going to do it.
And I think now, with Renfrow kind of, I don't want to say a similar role because they clearly play different positions, but safety valve-y kind of player. Maybe that takes away some of his targets. I feel like the Raiders will get a receiver in the offseason.
With Waller, for me, he can be effective anywhere on the field. So if somebody's going to be efficient or Renfrow is efficient, they might end up like pushing him like down the sidelines, like deeper in the field. So you get more yield for his catches and all that, but he might just not be getting the volume that you're used to going forward if that's the way. That's the way I would do if I was an OC, because if I've got somebody that's great in the middle of the field like Renfrow, then
I mean, Waller's basically a receiver anyway, in my opinion. I mean, He's obviously gotten better. He was a receiver when he got drafted, first of all, and then, he can block now, but he's basically a receiver. You just throw him on the outside, it's going to be fine. He can run routes, he can play. And it's crazy to think that, I was just looking here, he's going to be 30 next year. I remember just that Senior Bowl or the East-West Shrine game where I saw him, and I can't believe that was 6 years ago already. It just blows my mind. That was more than 6 years, 7 years ago. So, Waller, if he kind of does take that step back, Vince luckily has Logan Thomas, who should have a role next year. He got signed to a contract extension. Hate to see that injury for Logan Thomas, by the way. I'm sad for the guy. He just got banged up all year. Just didn't really work out.
We'll see if he's feeling froggy, I think if he's going to upgrade a position, you've got Justin with 2 great young tight ends. You've got yourself, who's got an aging tight end.
Yeah, Kelsey is, yes, aging.
I would be
still good.
Still great.
It's just aging, yeah.
The
wheels will come off eventually.
He's so deep at like his other positions that he could do that move if he wanted to, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be very much part of the off-season talk, and we talked about Cam Akers already, so we can kind of move on here to the number 5 team, and that is the Toronto Battle Axes. And Scavelli, I'm gonna go out and say it. I feel like he was. I don't want to call him a fraud because he's not, but this team should not have been in the playoffs based on scheduling and points. Definitely shouldn't have been 10-4. He had 1,700 points. Justin had more points, and I believe one other team that didn't make the playoffs also had more points than he did. So I feel like, with Scavelli winning a bunch of games early on in the season with Derrick Henry, kind of tailed off towards the end of the year when he wasn't getting that kind of production. Russell Wilson also had a down year. Allen Robinson had a down year. Kittle was hurt during a majority of that middle of the season. So this 10-4 season, you could kind of see an early exit on the horizon of this playoff berth for him. This team also, when I looked at it just a couple of hours ago while I was making up these slides, not a ton of depth. There's guys that we thought would be good depth players this year. For example, Robbie Anderson, Marvin Jones, some guys like that, where it could show up and get you 60 yards, 70 yards. Those guys just didn't do that this year. And with that combined with the injuries, definitely made me very concerned for an early playoff exit, and that's exactly what happened. So maybe next year it gets people healthy and we can see how it goes. But
I actually don't see his team very differently than you probably see your team, which is why you made the trade. I would think about just selling.
It's similar. Yeah, I think it's very similar, specifically with some of his top end talent. Like you said, Henry's kind of, unfortunately now his value took a hit with the injury. But a couple of these other guys, it's almost hard to sell a few of these guys right now, specifically like an Allen Robinson, not knowing where he's going to be. Definitely after a down year, his value is not going to be nearly as high. The one thing that would kind of lead me to believe that he should hold on to his picks is the fact that he has picks, right? So if you want to go all in, the team is there to go all in with. You just have to hope there's not many injuries because there's not a ton of depth, like you said. But this is definitely like one of those teams that could pick a fork in the road and choose for the all in, or kind of just back off and try to rebuild a little bit. But after this year, you got to think Scavelli's disappointed with the underperformance of the team. I feel like you're going to see some moves from Scavelli this offseason, specifically with some of these bigger kind of guys, the Russell Wilsons, the Derrick Henrys, maybe. We'll see what happens.
If we know anything, Scavelli always shows up for draft day.
Scavelli will be here for draft day, and he probably won't have any picks by the end of draft day. Nope. It doesn't usually work out that way.
All right. Kick it to the next one?
Yeah, let's go to the next one here. And that is the Long Gamers. And the Long Gamers finished at 9-5, got into the playoffs, and looked really good. Looked really good with Jonathan Taylor, who is God.
Our Lord and Savior.
Your Lord and Savior, Jonathan Taylor. Man, I remember it wasn't that long ago where you were talking about trading Jonathan Taylor prior to the year.
Aren't you glad you didn't? Somebody if the price is right. You just got to know that the price has got to be right.
Dude, I still can't believe you're like, in hindsight, I just can't believe we were talking about it. I mean, Jonathan Taylor completely.
We're talking about like 5 or 6 first-round picks for.
Well, now we'll talk.
No, that was what it was before.
I thought you were talking like 3 or 4.
No, it was like It was like 4 or 5.
How can you even get 6? How's that even possible?
I don't know.
Oh, this is Tibbs. It's not even possible. Yeah, dude, Jonathan Taylor is a god. I think I'll throw this in Alex's face forever, but I called him generational, and Alex thought I was an asswipe. So I think I'm getting the better end of that one. Jonathan Taylor, RB1. Literally, if you just look at his sleeper game log, it's just littered with 30s and 25s and 40s, and it's disgusting.
Only disappointment is that he gets Jacksonville in week 18, which doesn't do anything for fantasy football.
That doesn't help you. No.
I did the math. If he runs for 264 yards against Jacksonville, he'll run for 2,000 this year. And I mean, would you bet against it?
I think he's got like 18 touchdowns too. Some stupid number.
No, he's got more than that.
I mean, at least 18 rushing.
Yeah.
He's been completely outrageous. But the crazy thing too with Jonathan Taylor, like I feel like the Colts are an ascending team still too. I still feel like they're, probably going to pick up a receiver, pick up a tight end or something. They're still going to go up. Their offensive line is outrageous. Another year of Carson Wentz can't really hurt at this point. I feel like Carson's actually the best possible quarterback to be paired with for him because he's
good
not
enough
that inspiring as a passer.
Yeah, he's good enough to get passes out there, but he's not good enough to be the focus of the offense.
Well, he's enough to make the defenses not throw 9 in the box. It's not like having like Teddy Bridgewater or some shit.
Right.
So I feel like he actually fits the makeup of the offense pretty well. And they're just only going to get better. I feel like Jonathan Taylor, I mean, he's young as hell. He's got a lot of tread on the tires. That's the only thing that kind of concerns me. Dating back to college, he was a 4-year senior at college and a shit ton of carries. So maybe that plays into it long term. But if you're looking at it right now, next 3 years, Jonathan Taylor is looking like one of the top 5 dynasty assets at least. I mean, he's going to be a stud.
Fun fact that I saw earlier, because it shows the top 10 player performances all time in our dynasty league. 9 of the 10 players are quarterbacks. The one player that is not a quarterback, who ranks 5th on that list for 1 game total, Jonathan Taylor.
5 all time, and that's, I believe, going back to 2018, right?
In a 6-point touchdown quarterback league. He's still 5th.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'm not going to lie to you.
That's great.
The man's a baller. Probably don't need to discuss it too much more at this point. We all know he's a baller. So let's talk about that Tyree Hill trade. A little bit hit or miss. His boom weeks are very boom, and that's kind of Tyreek's entire career at this point.
He had like 1 year where he was like very consistent, and then outside of that, it's been.
I think it was the year I had him right before I traded him, actually. And he's kind of just a 25 or a 4 kind of guy, which is fine. That being said, I think over the next few years, I don't think anything's going to change for him. I think it's just until he loses that step in his speed, which guys like Deshaun Jackson, some of these burner kind of guys, they still have been pretty relevant towards the end of their career too. I feel like Tyreek is a bit of a different animal where he might just be a freak and, he's going to be around for longer than maybe we expect. I don't know how old he is, Sean. You might actually have to remind me on that one. I thought he was like 27 or 8 at this point.
Yeah, that sounds about right. What it feels different for me compared to like the other burner guys is that he's actually very good, like with contested catches.
Oh yeah, for his size, he's like a little like he's a rabid animal. The kid goes up and goes for it. And
27.
So 27. So he's still young. I mean, he's going to be good for the next 3 years. And you gave up 2 firsts for him.
Yeah,
dude, it's a fine trade. And I feel like, now you get Tyreek Hill paired up with a potentially healthy, we'll talk about him next, AJ Brown. If he can put it together, if that guy can put it together, this could be a disgusting receiving core. All right, so just hear me out for a second. I'm gonna probably get you real excited for no reason here, but you get a healthy AJ Brown, you get Tyreek just doing Tyreek things, and then the one Aaron Rodgers floats his way over to Denver, and then you get a Cortland Sutton, mega boost, and then DJ Moore gets a quarterback, and it's just, this is so great. This is what we're here for.
And then
and they're all young.
And then my wide receiver one is still Amon-Ra St. Brown, baby.
And staying.
We're good.
We haven't even talked about Amon-Ra, the sun god himself.
I offered him the 3rd round pick to Justin for fucking Cordero Patterson. I'm glad he declined it.
Yikes. Big yikes. I hadn't heard. Oh, yeah, you did tell me about that the other day, but I don't think the PHU podcast has heard that yet.
No.
That's a yikes moment for sure. Breaking news.
Let's go all in for the playoffs, baby. Let's do it. Nope.
Wow. Well,
it was better because Cordero was not good the last 3 weeks of the season.
No, he's banged up. So yeah, anywho, wide receiver room could be pretty freaking good if the right pieces fall into place. So AJ Brown's a little banged up. We talked about that. Lamar kind of was also banged up throughout the year as well.
Not good right
now. Carson Wentz is not great for fantasy. Lamar's banged up. When he played, he was fucking awesome though. Early in the year, he was dropping 40 burgers, a couple of crazy games. I feel like you're just going to be in the market for like a consistent type backup at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really hinging on like who comes into Denver this season because
Justin Fields be big.
Has the ability to be that dual threat. So we'll see. That would be great. I would love
if Fields kind of takes that step up, then it's not even a problem anymore. It's not that it's a problem now. It's just, if Lamar is going to be banged up, which I do think he will kind of be that kind of guy for pretty much the entirety of his career. It's kind of nice to have some guy in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So I ask you a question. What is Clyde Frog? I have no idea.
Clyde Frog is hurt. That's what he is.
Like, do we know if he's good? Do we know if he's good yet? Next.
Do we know if he's good? Yeah, I think he's good.
You think he's good? Okay. Yeah. I just don't know. I don't even have an opinion.
I don't think it's hard to be a good running back on that team.
So you think because it's the team and the Andy Reid that all he has to do is just stay healthy and he's going to be good? All right. Fair enough. I just wanted to know what you thought of him because I always feel like he is a bit of an enigma at this point. Like, we just don't really know what his value is in Dynasty. Like, he could be one of the top 10 running backs, but we just haven't seen it. So until I see it, I keep asking the question, what is Clyde Frog? I just don't even know.
His strengths don't really match up that great with Mahomes because he's a very good receiver. I mean, we just go.
They just don't throw it to him.
But they don't really throw to the running backs that much.
That's not their scheme. Their scheme is all about intermediate passing routes and option plays, and none of those things bode well for receivers out of the backfield because most of the time, if Mahomes is running around, he either just scrambles it himself or he just does some backyard sandlot shit and throws it up, and it works out. So I just feel like you're definitely in the right when you say that it's not a great scheme fit for Clyde, even though that he should be. I always thought he would be using that Brian Westbrook-y type role where he was catching a lot more passes in the back out of the backfield, but that's just not the case, I guess. So
traditionally, when a team has a very ball dominant tight end, usually those targets will come away from the running back position compared to the wide receiver position too. So when you've got Kelsey, you'll do your own research. I'm pretty confident when I say that. But
no, I believe you. I believe you 100%. I mean, I feel
like the other thing.
They're safety valve type players. Like, that's what they are at their core. I mean, a receiver is going to be downfield, and a tight end or a running back or an H-back is going to be near the line of scrimmages most of the time. So it definitely makes sense as far as schemes go.
Yeah. If I'm Mahomes and my safety valves are Clyde or Travis Kelsey, who can just take it to the house if he catches the ball every time.
Yeah. Why not? Why not give it a shot, right? So I do like the long gamers heading into next year. I feel like the arrow is definitely pointing up still. I think, honestly, with kind of those core pieces that we talked about, and then, Clyde Frog hitting, full stride, getting some of the tight ends going as well. We're looking good on this team. This is probably going to be another playoff type year. Hopefully you can get the push and keep going towards that championship game. But this is what This is what a good rebuild looks like. This is it took a while, and that's part of the long game. That's part of the brand, but it did work. And here we are. We're talking about this team with the contenders, and that's what the rebuilders should be striving for. So let's go ahead and move on. We'll talk about a team that everybody knows I love, the Bombers. 1,810 points for, which was more than Scavelli, who had a 10-4 record. So just one of those oh shits.
Luckers.
Yeah, this seems to be a recurring theme for the Bombers. They just put up points and don't seem to get in. So I really feel bad for Justin Senior. I think he's done a great job putting together this roster, to be honest with you. If you look at it on paper, it looks like a contending team, in my opinion. I say this every year, and it just hasn't really worked out. So maybe I need to change my tune. I don't know. That being said, he had 2 high first-round picks via trade from last year. One of them being Jamar Chase falling into his lap after Alex took Najee Harris and then traded him away. Jamar Chase literally, I believe, was the number 2 or 3 receiver. I'm going to look it up really quick here. I'm not prepared. Sorry.
3 standard.
Number 3 receiver standard as a rookie. Absolute murder season. Just exactly what he hit his ceiling in year 1. So this guy, I mean, he arguably, actually we'll talk about, I have this later for the would you rather, but Jamar Chase is looking great. And I think now with him paired up with the next guy in this headline, having the stack of Burrow Chase for the next 5 years is hot. It's hot. Yeah, it's going to be good. You combine these 2 guys with Pitts, with some of the other kind of ancillary type players on this team. He's got Hawkinson still. He's still got Chris Godwin. He's got Deontay Johnson. The core of this team is there, and the depth is there. There's a lot of depth. So I think with he also has the number 4 overall pick this year. He could use that pick to maybe boost the team via a rookie or a trade. There's tons of options for the Bombers to potentially get into the playoffs next year. I think if we kind of look at this team, as a focus for 2022, I see this team being the playoff team and Scavelli dropping out, or potentially me dropping out, depending on how the offseason goes and this team sliding his way in. So I think, another thing too is Michael Thomas literally didn't play a snap this year, had his injury issues, had his whatever else issues.
What is even going on with him?
Nobody even knows.
The Saints, right?
He plays for the Saints as far as I'm aware. That being said, if Michael Thomas shows up at all next year for the Bombers, instant upgrade. It doesn't, because he got nothing.
Instant sell.
And probably an instant sell. But it's just wild to think that he was the number 1 receiver 2 years ago and literally just hasn't played. I mean, he just hasn't even been on the field for the last 2 years, essentially. So, I mean, who knows what you're even going to get if he comes back. And he's had an injury too, so who knows. But I think, you get him back and there's no downside to actually getting him back to play. So, and then my favorite one on this list is the Rashad Penny resurrection. The evil spirits from the dead have vanished his body after 4 years. And Rashad Penny shows up for the playoffs and drops 24 carries a game, basically. Hundreds of yards, 7 yards of carries, touchdowns. Here you go. I'm Rashad Penny. I'm here.
Sure, why not?
Who the hell saw that coming? I mean, I just truly am shocked by the fact that has still managed to happen at this point.
Speaking of instant sells, anything Seattle is just an auto sell for me right now.
I think
off that team right now.
I want to say Penny is a free agent too, because I believe wasn't he a first-round pick?
He was.
So they actually probably had the option on him.
They declined it.
They declined the option already.
I'm pretty sure.
They probably declined it before this whole breakout happened anyway.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, he got declined.
So maybe who knows? They might bring him back. I know that Chris Carson had that neck injury, which never is
fusion
good.
surgery on his neck.
The word fusion and neck don't really go together.
For a running back, that's not good.
A power running back, yeah. I'm not feeling great about that. I think he's probably towards the twilight of his career at this point, anyway. So Rashad Penny just showing up out of nowhere, could just be an extra boost to this team for next year if he gives you anything. Because at this point, we thought he was nothing. So props to Justin for holding on to him for all that amount of time. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the Elk, the Kentucky Elk, led by Dustin, the Senator general manager. And it's such a weird year again for the Elk. I mean, I feel like we go into the podcast a lot and just say we don't really know where this team's at. And I really thought I knew where this team was at, and then a bunch of just shit happened. And Dustin
really
Dustin moved, offloaded 2 first-round picks and I believe some other shit in that Najee Harris acquisition towards the middle of the year that required an emergency podcast. And Najee Harris ends up finishing this season as running back 4, I believe. Just pretty much as steady Eddie as you can get because of all the volume he got. Probably the worst running back 4 a year of all time if you look at the actual numbers. I mean,
very possible.
He had like 3.7 yards a carry, I think, or some shit. They just could not give him anywhere to work with. Yet he still put up numbers because he got tons of catches and was getting pretty much every single touch possible.
It'll be interesting to see who his quarterback is next year because Ben would just dump it down to him in the receiving game so much.
I didn't think that we were going to get that much receiving production out of Najee Harris year 1. I mean, I had him in redraft, and I was like, damn, this guy's getting like 7 catches a game. It's like PPR legend.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, this is another situation where quarterback, like you said, could be a huge factor in his output moving forward. I mean, get a guy like Aaron Rodgers coming in, get a guy, I mean, even like a Matt Ryan, just somebody with just a little more to offer than Ben at this point, could be huge for Najee Harris. And honestly, the biggest thing is they just got to literally just draft all offensive linemen. That's all they need to do. Just draft every offensive lineman in the draft possible. And that's it. That's all the Steelers need to do. And they should be able to get him something to work with. Go out in free agency, try to find something. But
we'll see. That's just not, I mean, Tibbs would probably be the best person to answer this, given he's a Steelers fan, but they just never do anything splashy.
That's not really their MO. They're a build through the draft type team.
The AFC version of Green Bay. Like they don't really spend like a lot of money out there in free agency. They draft and promote from within.
They do a really good job of picking up kind of lower level ancillary kind of guys. I think they picked up like Melvin Ingram at some point this season. Like guys like that, just they're cheap players, but they've had proven production at some point in their career. I think for the Elk specifically, this is the right player for this team given his age and where this team is at. I think that this team is close to being able to contend, but the big question actually is towards the end of this list is Calvin Ridley. He goes from being the number 4 receiver, I think, last year to literally just kind of up and leaving, and we don't even know if he's coming back. We know literally nothing.
Literally nothing.
And that's a wide receiver 1. I mean, just kind of off the team, and obviously Dustin wasn't predicting that or had any idea of that. But you get a Calvin Ridley, to come back and look good, and get Devontae Smith going, and he has a lot of quality depth. Elijah Moore, he has a lot of young guys that really look like they could be impact players on the bench. In addition to having arguably the deepest running back room out of the entire league. For example,
those top 3 on the list are great.
I mean, those 3 alone are great. Didn't even mention David Montgomery I believe he had a couple other ones that are starting caliber players. He's got a Zach Moss as like a ancillary guy. I mean, the team
probably
has
best
talent.
quarterback pairing in the league too.
Yeah, probably the best overall 1-2 punch. Honestly, it's one of the things that probably isn't even necessary. Probably could trade one of those if he wanted to. I feel like he is in a great position at this point now with the running backs he has. It's just going to be a matter of he needs these young wide receivers to take that next step, specifically the rookies from this year, Bateman, all the guys he drafted from this year, in addition to Ridley coming back. That's what needs to happen in order for this team to take that next step. But at least we know where he's going now.
Yeah.
I feel like last year we didn't, and now we do. So that kind of helps.
Thing to note is that Calvin Ridley missing pretty much an entire season. He's like a young to the NFL, but he's not that young.
No, he came as a 24-year-old rookie.
24. He's older than Amari Cooper.
Yeah, and it feels like Cooper's been in the league forever. I think he's like roughly this. He might be the same age or roughly the same age as like Mike Evans or some shit. I don't. It's just crazy.
You don't know what kind of shape he's keeping himself in. Like being away from the team, you don't know anything. So it
seems like the Falcons don't know anything really either, and if they do, they're not saying anything.
This is guy coming for me. I have him in the Galactic League. I am very, very concerned.
Yeah, I'd like to see what happens. That being said, it was a disappointing year for the Elk, but I really do believe that this team is trending in the right direction. And maybe next year you see more of a push for the playoffs than this year, assuming that all the players kind of keep on their right trajectory. So let's go ahead and move on to the 9th team, and it's everyone's favorite, Muskrats. The headlines for the team: he offloaded Najee Harris. Still have no idea what the hell that was about. And it just hurts when you look at the fact that Jamar Chase is arguably the number 1 overall asset in all of Dynasty at this point. I mean, yeah, I'm not even going to talk about it anymore. It's too much to even mention. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the. Actually, we'll talk about Judy first. So we still don't really know Judy at this point, what he is. He's pretty much still an unknown. He's been injured a lot. When he has played, he's had a couple of flashes here and there, but mostly a lot of nothing. But we really don't know what his overall outlook looks like until we find out what his quarterback is next year. If it's Rodgers, it could be through the roof. If it's Matt Ryan, it could be a lot of the same. I'm not really sure.
Even still, like, they just re-signed both of the other wide receivers, so this is going to be a 3 wide receiver team that really doesn't know who their wide receiver
4 if you count Fant.
No, Fant. And
Fant's pretty much a receiver.
As currently constructed, they're a run-first team.
Yeah, so. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a big Judy breakout. We'll put it that way. Yeah. I think based on the money they spent on Cortland Sutton, that's the guy they think is going to be the wide receiver 1 breakout, not Judy. So I wonder.
The best receiver on the team. So.
Well, I agree with that too. But Judy is a guy that Alex has been talking up. This is a guy that, he was supposed to be a big hit in the draft. I mean, I think he was the number 4 or 5 pick in our draft. He was supposed to be one of the best route runners coming out, and we just haven't seen a whole lot. So that's obviously not playing well into this rebuild as of right now. It's just going to be another year older with not a lot of production. But the guys that have played well this year for the Muskrats as far as rebuild goes is Swift. Has looked great when he plays. I feel like he's going to be a guy that's injured a lot throughout his career, and that's okay. But when he does play, he's really freaking good. And paired up with a check down quarterback like Goff, I don't know how long that's going to stay the case. Probably, I think Goff goes 1 more year, and then they blow it up after. I feel like this year they're just going to take the best defensive player, and then next year they'll probably go for the quarterback.
Taking a receiver too. As much as I like,
they have to. They kind of have. They just don't have anyone.
Yeah.
They tried a couple of veteran guys like Rashad Penny and Tyrell Williams. Neither one of those did anything.
That ain't it.
So I think they'll definitely draft one. They'll definitely
reach
it. Maybe if they think that fits their rebuild plan. I mean, he's going to be. I think Godwin's like closer to like 27-ish.
Half a year.
Yeah.
Works
I mean,
for them.
might get him cheap, yeah.
You get to rebuild again, yeah.
It's just another rebuild. And then another guy that flashed and has played really well this year, Jalen Waddle. I believe he's close to 1,000 yards for the season, but probably will top it in this last game.
200 catches.
A lot of catches. Yeah, a lot of catches, a lot of targets. He right now, Waddle is kind of in the perfect situation for Waddle, if that makes sense. He is a guy that's a catch and run guy, and Tua is the perfect quarterback for him. I feel like obviously with the Alabama connection, that's a great thing already. But Waddle being in a place where it's a lot of design plays, screen plays, a lot of slants, some hitch and goes, like not a lot of I don't want to say not a lot of creativity, but just not a lot of route tree options is actually a good thing for Tua because we haven't seen a whole lot of downfield work from him yet either. So I think Waddle's in a great spot, and he's looked really good, in just 1 year of action. He's kind of had a couple injuries throughout the year too that he's been dealing with. So I'm a fan. I wasn't really a huge fan going into the year, but it looks like that's a great fit.
I'm actually going to slightly disagree with you. I actually think he's being held back quite a bit.
So you think with Tua, he's being held back?
Between their O-line and Tua not being able to throw more than 15 yards down the field, yeah, I think so. I think he's like they're going to force feed him the ball because he's that kind of talent, which is what's happening. But the offense is so limited that it's really not letting him show off the rest of like his game.
I would agree.
Is more than much more than what he's actually gotten this year. When Vince watches this, he can respond. I think he would probably agree too. Like he's a stud. He's great.
Vince and I have discussed. I mean, I haven't watched a whole lot of Dolphins this year, I'll be honest. But the games that I have watched, their offensive line play is an absolute joke, and Tua has absolutely no time to throw based on what I've watched. So it's hard to judge anybody really in this offense until they get a line because, I mean, Tua, it doesn't look like he has a lot of arm strength, but it also looks like he has no time to even try to throw a downfield pass. So you can't even judge really anything.
It's highly disturbing that they bring in Jacoby Brissett to throw a deep pass.
That is a little concerning, yeah. But that was also when he had his injuries, though, didn't he? So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like just Tua, we don't really know yet because of the team around him. And Waddle, you're probably right. We don't know what his ceiling is at all at this point until we get a more opened up version of the offense, if there is one, just to see what he can do. But right now, when you look at Alex's team, there's, T. Higgins is somebody to be excited about. There's a few quality players that you can find, throughout the roster. Michael Pittman is another one. But, with Trevor Lawrence pretty much just face planting this year and not a whole lot of other options at quarterback, I'll be honest. It's looking like it's going to be another year.
Where did he go in our draft?
In our draft, 1.8.
Ah.
1.8, which was part of that Mark Andrews trade.
Got it.
The number one tight end.
What tight end? Yeah. Where did he finish at tight end?
I believe number 1.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I actually have no idea where Trevor Lawrence sits in the rankings. I probably should look that up. I'm curious. Like, what QB do you think he finished?
31.
31. Holy shit. I mean, he played every game, so 23.
No.
23. But the craziest stat, and I remember we talked about this the other day.
7 weeks without throwing a touchdown pass.
That's what I'm saying. He has 10 touchdowns for the entire season, and he went from week 9 to week 17. He had 2 touchdown passes. And he had 4-pick game, a 3-pick game, another 3-pick game. I mean, but the thing is, I just feel so bad for the kid. I mean, the team is a fucking joke. So, I'm sorry, and I lied to you. It was 1.6. Was
I thought that's what Waddle was.
No, he was 1.8, I believe, or something.
Oh,
where the hell?
What a value pick for Waddle at 1.8.
I know. Who knew? Alex knew apparently. Let's see. Jalen Waddle history 1.8.
Oh, all right.
Number 22 overall receiver, rookie year. Pretty good. Pretty damn good. So we know what the Muskrats are at this point. They're rebuilding, and it's been that way for quite a while.
Always rebuilding.
I'm always interested to see what's going to come of the offseason when it comes to the silly nannies. So there's plenty to talk about there. So let's go on to the last
Give me this next one. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to tank? This is how you tank.
This is how you rebuild, boys. This is it.
Tibbs understood the assignment.
He understood the assignment. So he went 0-14. He has essentially at this point on his team, he has Patrick Mahomes, Elijah Mitchell, and these two tight ends that I mentioned here, Dawson Knox and Dalton Schultz. So Dalton Schultz and Knox were the number 4 and 5 tight ends this year. It's crazy. And Mitchell played really well when he was healthy this year, and he looks like he's going to be the RB1 for until Kyle Shanahan changes his mind. I don't know. But the number 1 pick was secured. He did understand the assignment. And now he has 6 of the top 11 picks in this draft, Sean. It's going to be the Tibbs show.
He's got to do something that he hasn't done in years.
I know, and I'm honestly a little bit jealous. I'm a little bit jealous because I love the draft, and I strive to one day be in a position where I can just have so much fun and just scout the draft hard and pick all the guys I like. I would love that.
Luckily, the ability to draft is just like the bar is so low based off of other teams that have tanked in this league for missing picks that he's just got to do okay.
Yeah, you just got to hit 50% and you're set. And we've looked at the numbers. We did the whole review of this in the offseason. Like if you're above 45%, you're crushing it. You're crushing it. So if Tibbs can hit 5, picks over the next couple of years, look, I mean, that's half your starting roster, arguably almost. So he already has guys that are good now too. So it's not like he has to fill out, 13 total spots. He pretty much has all of the receivers to hit on, which luckily it appears that 2022 is going to be a good receiver draft. So fits really well into the rebuild. But he doesn't need a quarterback, and he pretty much can go any direction after that. So
he's got Mac Jones on his team too, doesn't he?
He does have Mac Jones. I was going to put that on here, but I felt like it wasn't that big of a headline considering he has Pat Mahomes probably never even play him. So, anywho, we know that Tibbs is rebuilding, and he has a lot of picks this year. He's got 3 firsts next year, and he has 3 firsts the year after that. So he has, I believe, 8. So he's got 11 first-round picks over the next 3 years. So he should be in a position, if he hits half of those and gets to like 6, let's say he hits 6 out of them, it's looking pretty good. So it's all about the scouting and will he hit on his draft picks.
Can't wait to see the over-under for wins on Dynabook next year for Tibbs. Very excited for that one.
That'll be kind of tough because he's going to have so many rookies. Like, if 3 of the rookies hit, I put him at like 4. Because Alex went 4-10. His team is garbage.
Yeah, you never know.
So you never know. So it's possible. All right. So that is the season recap slides. And for those of you that make it this far in the video, we're an hour and 20 minutes in roughly. We have a new little segment, and it's going to be a Sean-based segment called Would You Rather? And I'm going to ask him, I'm going to give him 2 options, and he has to tell me which one he would take and why. And if I have any thoughts, I might butt in. Who knows? But this is it's a Sean segment. I'm gonna let him run with it. So let's get it going. Let's go with the first one. Would you rather have? And this is Dynasty, so you gotta always think about Dynasty type rankings here. It's not redraft. It is James Robinson or Tony Pollard. Who would you rather have right now?
Pollard.
So he takes Pollard. I tend to agree. It hurts my soul because we know how good James Robinson was because the Achilles could change everything. That being said, when does Pollard have big fantasy relevancy?
Pretty soon because Zeke's not very good. So,
I know Zeke signed the big contract. We need to find out when the Cowboys have the out. Because if he's there for 2 more years, then you're still looking at Tony Pollard chilling pretty much for 2 more years. So I don't know that's the only real. We know he's good. We know he's a good player, and we don't really know if he can carry the load either. Actually, so that's where it's hard because like we know what James Robinson is. We know he's good, but we don't really know his injury status, and we don't know Tony Pollard when he's going to get playing time. So that's why I kind of put these two together.
Fair enough.
I think I would probably side Pollard because Achilles injuries scare the shit out of me. But that's kind of where I sit on it. Let's go to the next one. It's Khalil Herbert or Kenny Gainwell, two guys that are a little bit buried on the depth chart right now, but both showed well when they do play. What do you think?
I'm going to take Herbert. I think one injury secures him the number one back on his team. Any injury, Kenny Gainwell is still going to platoon. Gainwell's a better receiver. I get a lot of like J.D. McKissick vibes for like his role in any offense he's going to be in.
Okay.
Herbert, I think he's going to have more touchdown upside if he gets the ball. So I'm going to go with Herbert.
Another thing too, I would go with Herbert as well. I think potentially with Montgomery, I think he's getting closer towards his contract. If they don't feel they want to pay him and they saw enough out of Herbert to be like, all right, let's give him a shot. Herbert could see a much bigger overall potential role down this next couple of years here. So whereas Gainwell, I do think like he's more of kind of just a scat backy kind of receiving guy, but I also see a role to relevancy for him too. With a potential 50-50 split with Sanders there. Next one's a little hot, so that's why I kind of steered away from Jamar Chase conversation earlier. So Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, who are you taking, Sean?
I'm probably going to take Chase. It's actually very close. Tiebreaker is going to go to Joe Burrow, though. He's just a much better quarterback and a much more solid, like, just foundation to work off of. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen in Minnesota. They could move off of Kirk Cousins if they want to. We'll see. But like you said, Chase and Burrow are going to be together for 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, from a dynasty perspective, when you look at who they're tied to, I feel like Chase is probably the better option. Another thing to think about, these two guys were on the same team together at one point. How
they sure were.
Insane is that?
Boo Tigers.
Yeah, they know receivers there. I remember when I thought the LSU couldn't figure out receivers when I had like Ruben Randall and shit. I was like, LSU receivers suck. And then they go like OBJ, and then they go like all these monsters. So clearly I was wrong on that. That being said, I think Justin Jefferson is an actual, like, if you look at like who's a better receiver.
I think Jefferson's just if like I was picking just for a football team. Like,
well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Fantasy.
We're talking about dynasty, so Chase feels like the better choice there. But like from a football perspective, I feel like Justin Jefferson's a better football player.
Yep.
Whereas I feel like Chase is more athlete-y.
Yeah.
Which is fine. They both work. But that's why I feel like the Bengals right now have one of the most underrated receiving rooms because they all complement each other so well. So you got Chase, who's very athletic, can also make plays down the field and above the rim. You got T. Higgins, who's kind of that Mike Evans-y baller kind of guy. And then you got Tyler Boyd, who's incredibly underrated every single year. Not much of a fantasy option, but football-wise is just as rock solid as you can get as a slot guy. They're set up so well for the next 3-5 years. I mean, at a minimum, as long as Mixon plays there, basically. All they need is a tight end, and that offense is loaded. So I side dynasty-wise with Chase, football side with Jefferson. And the last one might tug at your heartstrings because you like both of these players. So I did this on purpose. I'm sorry, but it's Scary Terry or DJ Moore.
Man,
I had a hard time with this one.
Usually I'll like if I'm close, I'll fall back off like the situation with the teams, but they're both a little dreadful.
That's kind of the reason I picked it too, because I didn't want the cop out. Oh, he's got a better quarterback because we don't know at this point.
I just don't believe in the Washington football team at all.
Just as an organization.
At least with like David Tepper, like he's willing to just fucking go all in and like.
Oh yeah, he'll throw money at whatever. He doesn't give a shit.
at some point, like hopefully he'll like learn a lesson and realize that he should just like draft a quarterback or like sign somebody that's like legit.
Man, when's the last time they drafted a quarterback? It was Cam, probably. I
think so. Yeah.
It's been a while.
So I'm gonna take DJ Moore just because like he's still, even without a quarterback, he's been great every year. I mean,
he's had 1,000 yards every year, as far as I'm aware.
Go to his yardage.
I'm going to take McLaurin because I think he's a better receiver. So I feel like if there's any shot of like, I still wish he would have played with Fitzpatrick this year. I feel like that would have been a phenomenal combination.
You can go back to the tape and listen to me talking about Terry.
You were saying that years ago, before he was even on Washington.
And then Ryan Fitzpatrick had the fucking, was it a hip injury? Something.
He had some bad injuries, probably a career ender.
So sad.
But I just feel like he's so
Jamie Brown would have been good with him too. Fitzpatrick would just throw it up. Oh my god.
Jamie Brown didn't do fucking shit this year as a De'Ami Brown owner.
He played DeAndre Carter a ton.
Yeah, I just don't understand. I think Brown was hurt a couple of weeks in a row, and I think that's when Carter broke out, and then they're kind of like, all right, let's just not do Brown anymore for a while. It's like, all right, fine, whatever. But I just love McLaurin at this point. I watched a couple of games this season, even with how crappy the Washington football team have been. Like, he just makes plays despite being the crappiest, like the best player on a crappy team. Like, he just makes it happen. And I love guys that just make things happen even though they have terrible situations. So if he can get any sort of quarterback boost, I mean, at this point, anything's better than like Heineke or Sam Darnold / whatever the hell the Panthers are doing.
Cam Newton.
I mean, dude, I freaking hate Cam Newton. I hate him so much.
Missiles into the ground.
He is so bad. I can't believe they paid him as much as they did too.
Oh, they got it back in ticket sales after he got signed. Don't you?
That's true. They probably got a bunch of jersey sales out of it. Yeah, I bet they like that. Oh
yeah.
All right. Well, I did 4 Would You Rathers. Hopefully that was a nice change of pace segment for this podcast. We got about an hour and a half in, so probably a good time to call it.
4 more on the next episode, Eric.
I'll give you 4 more. I think it's a fun one. I think we're gonna do more of like these type of segments where they're not so team driven as opposed to previous years, just more overall dynasty discussion, and bringing on other people onto the podcast too. Maybe I'll play host for some, and we'll have Sean go head to head with some other folks in the league, make it a little bit more of a debate type of deal, and
bring it on.
And I think that would be some fun. So, like I said earlier in the podcast, we're gonna have James, the GM of the Lambs, come on next week to give his press conference for winning the league. And we have quite a few other podcast ideas kind of in the hopper that Sean and I have been discussing. I think we're also going to do a rookie report of some kind in the near future. It's kind of just recapping what the rookies have done this year and what their outlooks look like for each rookie that was drafted last year. I think that'll be a lot of fun, and also provide some decent chance for debate and maybe to bring somebody on for that one too. That would be kind of fun. So we'll wrap it up here. Sean, thanks again for the hopping on last second and doing a longer podcast today. And we will see y'all next time. Thanks for tuning in.